On behalf of the organizing committee of Unisactuarial School 2016, I am pleased to welcome Professor Elisa Luciano, Department of Economics and Statistics, University of Turin. Thank you very much for participating in the section Waiting for the School.
Thank you to you, Giovanna.
Would you like to present your proposal for assessing basis risk in longevity by stressing the impact on the hedging strategies of pension funds and annuity providers?
Yes, I'm very pleased to do so. As we know, longevity is dangerous for insurance companies issuing annuities in pension funds. So we have seen over the last years, especially outside Europe and in continental Europe, a number of deals for transferring this longevity risk. Usually hedging through longevity products, hedging this longevity risk, however, leaves the insurance company or the pension fund exposed to so-called basis risk, unless the deal is customized to the population of the fund. And we conducted, in the sense of Luca Regis, Clemente De Rosa, and myself, we conducted an extensive research for the Global Risk Institute in Toronto, funded by them, in order to assess the importance of basis risk when those deals are conducted. And the result is a theoretical contribution, because we wrote down a model which is very manageable, closed form solutions, easy to simulate, and even easy to calibrate, because the important thing is to be able to calibrate exactly the correlation between the fund population, so the portfolio population, and the reference population. So this is the single measure of basis risk that one has to calibrate, not to force. While most of the models we know around, they just force a number. We think that that work was important, and it was important also from the policy point of view, because it permits us to have a say on how important is developing a market for longevity transfer. Okay, so the greater it is the correlation between specific populations, portfolio populations, and national populations, so the smaller is basis risk, the greater is the room for standardized products and therefore for a true market, instead of having very costly customized products. So we do think that for the development of the market itself, not only for single companies, consideration of basis risk is very important.
Thank you. Could you deepen the dependent factor with the copula approach you introduced for modeling coupled lives of insureds and its evolution?
Yes. Copula functions are quite well known to the actuarial community. Because they permit to capture also nonlinear dependence, while in a number of other domains, the measure of dependence is linked to linear dependence or linear correlation. Again, we tried to enlarge the use of copula functions, which was already known to the in order to measure the dependence between the couples whenever you have, say, a reversionary annuity or a product of that type, between generations, so different cohorts. And now we want to also to use this in order to measure the dependence between different populations. So the copula functions was known, but I do think that there is still room for using it more extensively and applying it to, say, more modern problems like the basis risk I mentioned before, or the last thing I mentioned, namely the dependence between different populations whenever you have, say, longevity of different populations in different countries, which is a problem, again, very relevant for policy measures and for, say, pension systems around the world. So it's more a topic for OECD countries and the like. So I want to mention this because the applications are more broader than what we had in mind from traditional applications of copula functions in actuarial sciences.
Could you please explain your contribution on the study of the natural hedging of financial and longevity risks?
Natural hedging is quite again is not novelty per se, but is an important issue to study because of two main facts. First of all, solvency. So solvency has imposes to each specific financial intermediary or insurance company imposed to keep under control the level of risk. And obviously one has a sort of costly way to keep that risk bounded by hedging it, and by hedging it through third parties, so with products, derivatives which are issued by someone else, or internally. And in the case of portfolios of term and life insurance, one has the possibility to hedge internally through natural hedging. So considering the existence of solvency and the double possibility either to hedge through a third party or internally, obviously one has the natural hedging is much less costly. Okay. However, what is important is to be able to find a strategy for natural hedging which takes into consideration first the exposure to longevity risk and at least to interest rate risk. So the two cannot be disentangled. The main financial risk is interest rate risk, and when one does any natural hedge, he touches also, he changes the level of interest rate risk. So the two cannot be disentangled. Again, we used all our knowledge in the past together with Luca and Clemente. We used all of our knowledge in order to provide closed form formula for that. Again, we had that solvency is already quite complicated because you go to the level of computing values at risk, and therefore you need to start from something which is at the individual level quite simple. And the results of that would be soon published as a book by Springer. But what I want to stress in this occasion is the fact that it has always been in the mind of people looking at risk measures in insurance, life insurance companies. It has always been in their mind the idea that more or less longevity is much less important than interest rate risk. And contrary to that, our calibrated models, they show that the impact of longevity risk, especially in a low yield environment like today's one, the impact can be very important. And as a consequence, one has to really to pay attention to it. So results that again have been sort of introduced, the problems that have been introduced from the policy point of view, they can be analyzed very in detail. They can be calibrated if one has sort of the courage to go to sophisticated but still manageable models, and one can find a way to distill the importance of this longevity risk, which has been so, which went sort of was forgotten in the past in a lot of occasions. And now we can't disregard it anymore, both at the level of the single pension fund in the insurance company and at the macro level, as we see from all the problems of even of public pension systems.
Well, in light of your experience as stakeholders delegate in Reale Mutuo Assicurazioni, actuarial function auditor in Saravita, President of the Investment Committee in Sara Assicurazioni, Vice President in Sara Assicurazioni, Board Member in Saravita, and Board Member in Italiana Assicurazioni, could you please explain the importance of the aforementioned topics in the insurance industry risk management?
My experience as an academic who had the opportunity to know, to get to know how business is conducted in very serious insurance companies, and how important are and how strict are the rules of the regulators and the way these are correctly enforced. My impression is that the academic community can give some, learn a lot from the business. It can also give a sort of stylized view and help them distill the importance of different magnitudes. Say solvency is not only important for measuring risk, is important for disclosure, for managing, and for having a view of what are the drivers in very stylized models sometimes helps also when looking at their practical implementation, which obviously is more nuanced, more complicated, has many more constraints. So that the approach we took, again, let me mention the work with Clemente and Luca, in which I believe a lot, was helpful to me in order to sometimes to find my own reading of very complicated and practical stuff through my simplified lenses of an academic, but I guess it was not unuseful, and I hope it will be useful to me and to the persons I work with in the future. So it's the cooperation of what you learn as an academic and the way you you grow up and you learn how to distill things to try to keep the main stylized facts under control. That helps you giving your contribution to so-called the real life.
So, thank you very much for your cooperation, Professor Luciano. Thanks a lot on behalf of the organizing committee.
Yeah, thank you to you, and I hope that the school will help young generations to learn a lot and gain to use these instruments for the real life. Thank you, Giovanna. Bye
Best
bye.
regards.